Welcome to our weekly discussion of current affairs. We call it Moral Side of the News, and we're glad you're with us once again this week. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, as usual, a distinguished panel this week. Dr. Marian Taylor, South Frankfort Presbyterian Church. Reverend Jason Crosby, Crescent Hill Baptist Church. Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville. 10,000 is a big number. It's roughly the population of Kentucky towns like Versailles, Paris, and LaGrange. And now it's also a number Kentucky uses as a benchmark in its fight against COVID-19. Kentucky has now lost more than 10,000 residents to COVID. It took 6 months for Kentucky to lose its first 1,000 residents, but last month the total climbed to 9,000 deaths and still climbing in the bluegrass, most of them unvaccinated. Turning to our panel on Moral Side of the News, a staggering number. Let's get your thoughts and reflections.
It's a tragedy, and I so appreciated, I don't know if he's still doing it, but Governor Beshear was reporting those deaths every day for months, and you could hear the emotion in his voice, and I think it was genuine emotion that every human life matters. And this is, after a while, people might start to think, well, it's just a number, but it's a family tragedy wherever it happens. And it's something like at least 5 times the number of traffic fatalities. I think it's more than that. So to put it in perspective, it's still a scourge. And my heart just goes out to everyone who's been affected by this. And then on top of that, of course, all the folks who are going to live with long-term health issues that go along with it. So I want to send out my condolences to everybody who's been touched by this.
I think when we reflect on this now, gosh, we're getting close to 2 years in March. I think we can look at lots of negatives that I know we've taped a show recently where we talked about a lot of those things. I guess my first reaction is positive in terms of this. Thank God there are companies that can come up with a vaccine, not just one, not just 2, but 3, and maybe more to come. We've got up to 60% roughly in our country vaccinated. That's great. We needed a lot more. The healthcare workers, God knows they're to be blessed by all of us because they have done such a job. And all the positive things that have come out of this year in terms of this, despite the tragedy of 10,000, I don't want to forget all of that. But I think the damnable thing, if I can use that strong word, is that we've still got people who don't understand science, don't understand common good of what it means to help raise all brothers and sisters so we can get our way out of this pandemic, and our economy can get better, and all those other things that we're struggling with right now. But it's going to take all of us to work as a team, and not just as, well, I'm against you and all that, and it's them against us and all that kind of stuff. That is so tragic over this last year, and it's a mystery, really a mystery, where people get these notions and ideas and perspectives, because it's not religious. I'm sorry. It's not from my tradition or Stan's tradition or as a Jewish Christian. Sure, it's from our Muslim brothers and sisters as well, and so many other religions, because it's love of God and love of neighbor. And but much good, but boy, we've got a long way to go.
I'm tired of the politicians who cynically manipulate their constituencies in campaigns against masking. Yeah, a mask is inconvenient. recently I taught a couple of college classes, and I was asked to be masked during the hour and 15 minutes I taught. It was annoying to me, but I wouldn't think of not being masked. Likewise, with what is going on and politicians opposing vaccination, what could they be thinking? We're trying to save lives. We're trying to save our country. And to fight against the saving of human life as a political stand, it's nonsense. In the exact meaning of the word nonsense, it makes no sense. And it's cruel and evil.
And sometimes, again, and we don't need to get into the issue, but we talk about pro-life, and some people that I know, I am very pro-life. But with this question, what? You're contradicting yourself, which is, again, a mystery. Life is life, right? That's pre-born and post-born is life. So, hey. Yeah.
Well, as Marian mentioned, condolences to all those directly affected. At this point, I think it's difficult for nearly any Kentuckian to not at least have an acquaintance or someone that we care about that has been directly affected. So those folks have and continue to bear the brunt of this pandemic. A few things that come to mind as we've reached this unfortunate and sad milestone is in the months to come, as we continue to deal with the pandemic, grief has a way of enduring and lingering for a longer amount of time than we suspect. And I think that it's going to be important for all of us, whether we're ministers or just human beings, to be sensitive to the fact that collectively we're going to be dealing with a season of communal collective grief that we've never experienced before. And so even as hopefully we are getting a handle on the physiological aspects of this pandemic, the emotional and spiritual toll that this has taken on all of us that have been directly affected, indirectly affected, they will linger. And that's going to require some sensitivity and some grace moving ahead. One hope that I have coming out of this, and I think perhaps this might be a silver lining, Joe, to your point about the mystery of it all, is my hope and prayer is that while established institutions, be it the church, be it medical organizations, be it doctors, be it the political establishment, whatever it may be, that people at the very least begin to kind of rethink where they turn to in terms of what is authoritative in their lives. It seems that people have quickly turned to sources on the internet or to politicians that rise and fall very quickly and have dismissed institutions and individuals that have been entrenched and established as sources of authorities. Institutions that you represent, that I represent, that we're tethered to are far from perfect, and mistakes are made all the time. But there is a track record, and one hope that I have is people are beginning to think about, well, where do I turn to for medical advice? Where do I turn to for ethical advice? Let me suggest putting down the phone and talking to a doctor. Put down the phone and spend a few minutes in conversation with some folks who might be approaching this through an ethical or religious lens. I hope that collectively we will do that, because that has certainly been one thing that has exacerbated the pandemic and drawn this out. So I hope and pray that we will provide space for grief in the days to come, and we'll begin to rethink sources of authority over our own lives, in a variety of arenas, medically, spiritually, etc.
I appreciate that, Jason, a lot. I think one of the things that, looking ahead, all of us realize that variants keep appearing, and the likelihood of another variant, we're into Delta now, but it could be Zelta next year. Those kind of things are probably going to happen given our circumstances. How do we learn from this situation to not do the same thing we did in the next time the variant comes?
So there's research now that's going on that the people who are hospitalized with COVID can take a pill, and the pill will be the force to make them well again. Perhaps, and the medical research has been so phenomenal over the course of the less than 2 years. It has been, the great thing is human beings of goodwill throughout the world have banded together to solve this problem.
Yeah, and I think that helps, that feeling that we're not alone, that there is a common effort and that other people are there for us. So I want to build on that and build on what Jason was saying about the need for us to recognize the force of grief in our lives, and just make a direct appeal to people who might be listening or watching to this program to be a good observer of yourself and of your feelings. And if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, if it's just more than you can handle by yourself, to reach out to somebody you trust. It could be a friend or it could be a professional. I will just disclose that I came to realize a couple of months ago that somehow the pandemic was pushing some old buttons for me of an earlier period in my life when I was trying to just manage survival. And so there's a little bit of PTSD there. And so I've reached out to a mental health counselor that I've been seeing weekly for a couple of months now, and it's really helped. So, there's no shame involved in, and on the contrary, I think there's something really wrong with not seeking help when you need it. I would really encourage people to switch that optic and say that self-care is a duty. If we're called to love our neighbor as ourself, then we need to learn how to love ourselves. And so let me just urge that people who are feeling really strong feelings of grief or pain or fear, sense of survival, find somebody. Let's reach out to each other. And if you know somebody who seems to be feeling that way, talk to them, help them find somebody who's trained to help them.
I think the one other thing that I think of as we look going forward, we tend to focus on our country and what we're doing here and all that kind of stuff. But, we're such a blessed country and we can walk out almost anywhere and get a shot. Most of the world, as Marian certainly knows, and all of us who've visited other countries, there are many parts of our world in which that is not true. And how do we get vaccinations and mental health to both physical and mental health to many of those nations? I think it's got to be a priority over the next year for the whole world.
Good point.
Francis keeps telling us that all the time, like, hello, there's a world out there. And we get so self-absorbed that we forget about brothers and sisters on the other side of the planet.
All right, we're off to a good start on Moral Side of the News. And Marian, thank you for sharing that. Help is always available if you can seek it and want it and have the ability. So thank you for that. Our second topic, how much is enough when funding Kentucky public schools? Kentucky's School Funding Task Force, a bipartisan group, says Kentucky should provide more funding to the state's public schools. And the task force wish list will be considered by state lawmakers during the 2022 legislative session. So now turning to our panel, moral side of the news, your thoughts on public school funding?
I think that we need, first of all, we need to compensate our educators in every way possible. The starting salaries for public school teachers needs to be raised. We need to attract the best, the brightest, and the most enthusiastic to lead our classrooms. And going from our first topic, those people who choose to be educators and administrators and personnel in our public schools need to be protected against the ravages of the pandemic and also against acts of violence in the schools. We've all seen the videos, and there's no room for the behaviors that take place. And we can't just pay lip service to it. We've got to make it happen.
I think, like so many issues that we're dealing with in these days, not to get into the whole infrastructure, we certainly need bridges, we need roads, we need wideband, we need all of those kind of things. We have underfunded ourselves for years, up to maybe 40 years, because we don't want somebody to get too much. And we've underfunded education. Those of us, and probably every one of us here, has been involved in schools, and whether private schools, public schools, whatever, and everyone is underfunded because education takes a lot, especially if you want computers, and especially as you want all the new technology and all that kind of stuff. And we don't seem to see that. It should magically appear from outer space somewhere. But I mean, I think there are a lot of things that need to be funded, that need to be. I've met a couple. I just had supper with a bunch of retired teachers a couple times in the last couple of months, and gosh, they're frustrated. and some of them that are still in the system are incredibly frustrated. Last year was extremely difficult. And they just don't feel supported at all in lots of ways, and they haven't been. So money is one thing. I think there's a lot of other things that we could do as well. Thank God for affordable housing we're now working on, but that's another whole issue that we have underfunded. So, but I think schools are certainly one of the things that need more funding.
It was an election issue in the Commonwealth of Virginia this fall about parental control in public schools. And indeed, it may have lost the election for the incumbent governor. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I look upon it as there must be cooperation and collaboration between the parents, the educators, and the school boards to make the system work and to educate our children. I don't think that any of the parties, the parents, the educators, or the school board, have absolutely unequivocally every single answer. I think there has to be a getting together, but the collaboration cannot take the format that we see so often in our society, where people are verbally and physically attacked for their opinions. No
Well,
way.
Well, Stan, I think one thing that is interestingly distinctive about this particular proposal brought forth by this statewide education commission from the situation in Virginia was that seemed to be largely a curriculum-based debate, critical race theory, what books will be incorporated in classrooms, etc. Obviously, that's a hot topic. But the proposals that were brought forth by this bipartisan commission really aren't dealing with matters of curriculum. And it's in the context of a 2021 budget surplus. So this is not, do we tax this group or how do we raise the revenue? We have the money. And so the question before the General Assembly in 2022 is, do they use this surplus for basic educational investments such as full day kindergarten? We're not talking about CRT. We're not talking about this book or that book. We're talking about keeping kids in school. Do we use this money for transportation, public transport, so kids can get to school, so school districts don't have to invest that money, take it from this pot? That's not a very controversial issue. Do we use this money for school safety, for resource officers, mental health professionals, so that we keep our schools safe? These are not very controversial matters. We have the money. I implore anyone listening to encourage their state representative or state senator to just simply do the right thing. The money is sitting there. These are non-controversial matters. These will greatly assist our children across the state of Kentucky as they are seeking education.
Thank you, Jason. That's a great good information to share. And I want to add one more piece because it's been such a privilege to be on the Crusade for Children Grant Making Advisory Committee. And what I want to tell the public is that when we see proposals that come from the schools, they have been so conscientious. They think so hard when they ask for something that the school doesn't have. They're coordinated, they consult with each other, they prioritize. I've been so impressed with the grant proposals that we've received from the schools. And to me, that's an indication that if that's true of those requests, it's probably true throughout the system, that the school professionals are consulting with each other about what they need and what their priorities are. They can make good use of some extra dollars.
I would just affirm that, and especially as this WHAS Crusade for Children, of course, is for special education. I've often thought, and maybe John, it might be a good statistic, maybe you've got it somewhere, about just taking all the public school special education funding together in a lump sum for 1 year of the crusade. I don't know what that now it is, but I think that would be shocking to people how much we do that. And part of that is dealing with the one thing that Jason forgot, or didn't forget, but unfunded mandates, which is like, isn't that a contradiction? You're mandated, but we're not going to fund you. Obviously,
there's another
the
word for it, Joe. We call it alchemy.
Obviously, the Crusade, and we tell the schools all the time, we cannot solve the budget problems of the state. That's not our job. But we're trying to help those with special education and special needs. And thank God we've got the Crusade to do that.
All right, panel, we've got about 4 minutes left, and I want to give you a chance as we wrap up 2021. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections briefly on 2021 and your hopes for the coming year, 2022. About 4 minutes left.
I see 2021 as a year of amazing and wonderful progress. Remember, a year ago, very, very few of us had the opportunity to be vaccinated. Now, most of us who wish to be vaccinated, I dare say almost every one of us who wish to be vaccinated have the first shot, the second shot, and a good percentage of us have the booster as well. So I look at this year as a year of building hope. And I hope that the new year to come, 2022, is a year that will be a year of reopening and coming together as human beings.
I'll just quickly add, because I think perhaps the highlight of my year just took place recently. My children got vaccinated. They're ages 8 and 11. And not only was that a highlight in the year, it was a sacred moment. Didn't realize the kind of latent anxiety that all parents have been carrying around for a year and a half now. And so that was a highlight of 2021 for me. And then Stan, also to build upon what you said, looking forward to 2022, I hope that we are able to have some fun in 2022. Celebrate, be together, enjoy one another's company. I hope it will be a year of jovial festivity.
Moral side of the news back in the studio.
Maybe.
I'm going to declare the year 2022 the year of kindness and 2023 the year of gratitude. I think we're going to have to be extra kind in 2022 because of something that social scientists call the J curve. It's at that point when you start to get better that you realize how bad things were. And so there will be a mental health moment in the coming year as we start to get back to the things we miss, when we realize how bad things were for us and that things we're returning to are not the same. And I think there's a bit of a crisis built into that. So we need to be very kind with ourselves, very kind with each other, and work our way toward 23, which will be the year of gratitude.
I would add something that just comes from my own tradition, the Catholic tradition. Pope Francis has asked us for 2 years to do what he calls synodality. I won't go into that, but it's basically saying we need to sit down and listen to each other without judgment. Everyone, not just Catholics, all religions, sit down. We need to learn from each other and spend the years trying to, what's God calling us? What direction is God calling us into? I think it's a brilliant idea. God knows we need it. And Lord knows it's not always going to be the easiest thing to do. But I hope that a year of listening without judgment is a big point.
Thank you, Father Joe Graffis. You'll wrap up this edition of Moral Side of the News. Thank you to Marian Taylor, Jason Crosby, and Stan Miles. You can watch this program again anytime on YouTube, and this year, too, you can listen to it as a podcast. Just search for Moral Side of the News. Until next time, panel, thank you, and have a great week.